There's a massive appetite to move this along very, very quickly. I mean, but we are, Enterprise Ireland are trying to do what they can. The NRDC are trying to do what they can. Nova UCD are trying to do what they can. There's an investment community trying to do what they can. Legislation is trying to catch up. We're trying to get IP sorted out. We really are trying to get ourselves in the right place so that we can foster and develop all this talent that we do have in Ireland. I understand what Niall is saying. It can be frustrating, I think, if you're a startup with some great ideas and you just can't get your idea either heard or you can't get it developed properly, you can't get it funded properly. So I think we're a little bit behind the curveball when it comes to the investment that's available out there at the moment. I mean, our banking system, albeit that it's getting better, still have issues around how they lend and who they lend to, with their own sort of insolvency problems. And the money that Enterprise Ireland give out, I think it's, I could be wrong here, but I think it's belt and braces. They want to be very careful of how they're lending and who they're supporting. So the free flowing available of investment isn't there. And the investment community, be it private equity or private investors, do want somewhere to put their money because the deposit rates at the moment are desperate, so you're not going to get a huge amount of money out of deposit rates. So that money is there, but again, it's making sure that it finds itself into the right channels.
In my experience in dealing with technologists in London, nobody really wanted money. They wanted the state to do what it could do, like bring data and release it, and just do it, and stop talking about doing it, and just release it, right? And so, I think there are things that the government could do very quickly that are not, costly, and that could be done easily with some strong political commitment that would stimulate SME development, because that's what happened in London. We released the data, products and services were built, those entrepreneurs who could build products and services did so, and they never really wanted any money from the state. In fact, most technologists are kind of against the idea of taking money from the state in the first place, because they're startups and they believe if their idea is good enough, well, a venture capitalist is going to fund it eventually. Okay, so I do think there's a lot that government can do, but it needs to step up and actually do it.
But I think we do, and I think Maurice alluded to a little bit in terms of the finance side of things. We've obviously in the IA been having a number of conversations with banks, not the investment side, but just regular, our high street retail banking, and looking about their attitude and approach, obviously, to supporting our sector. And I suppose, Niall, you'd probably experience this as well. Your business, it's not an asset-based business. You're talking about cash flow lending. And I think we have an issue where the people who are making those decisions, those credit teams, those people on the coalface in banking, they don't understand these business models. They don't understand how to evaluate that level of risk. They don't understand, where are the emerging technologies in terms of startups, and what stage of development. It's understanding how their relationship fits in terms of financing a business where there's a VC or there's an angel investor involved, and how that impacts their relationship. Certainly when it comes then to evaluating the risk if everything, for example, went wrong, and you have to weigh up the fact that not all startups do succeed, is what are you left with at the end? Is there some IP on a shelf that's technically really worth nothing? So they really, there's a whole knowledge gap there, I think, at the moment, and we have to address that. We're doing, certainly in conversations with them, trying to address that in terms of providing some kind of information or knowledge or training to them. But I think there is an opportunity there to work more closely with the banks for them to understand and get this sector a little bit more than they do at the moment.
I mean, the banks just wouldn't give us a penny in the early days. It's getting better. There's a lot of sort of, there's Enterprise Ireland have competitive start funds, way around. There's a lot of sort of, it's not that hard to get 20 to 50 grand now, and that sort of money's around, but as soon as that doesn't do you that long, there's a big gap in all the VCs and funds in Ireland are still very risk averse, and taking it up to that next level is very hard, which is why the best talents, be it the Collison brothers or other really good tech Irish startups, they're all in San Francisco. They just leave immediately.
Worrying, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a bit worrying to see the likes of the Collison brothers setting up in Silicon Valley rather than here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have to do more. Any ideas? What are the things we have to be doing?
on a positive front in relation, and I know Suzanne mentioned the issue of data protection and legislation. You know, the one advantage of having, I think, the multinationals here and having their European headquarters here is that we do just geographically become the hub of where those discussions and conversations and where that lobby is taking place. We have benefited greatly from a fairly business-minded, proactive data protection commissioner in Ireland. They are not the soft-touch, lenient people that sometimes people think they are. That's bad press for them, but they are very pro-business. They have come under, I think, some slightly more pressure from the European Commission in recent, certainly in the last 8 to 10 months, you know, to say that, you know, a stern nod and shake of the head and wave the finger is not good enough. You will actually have to, you know, come down heavy on some of these businesses, and they will face the consequences for data protection. But I do think because they're here, we have the opportunity to be fairly proactive in that space, and that is a positive thing.
I also think it's a fundamental cultural difference in terms of approach to failure. So, you know, in Silicon Valley, there's a value in failure, right? Because that's how you iterate a product. In Ireland and in London equally. Venture capitalists want to see you kill yourself and bootstrap to the end so that you prove success, and then they can put money in. So it's a really fundamentally different model. And when there was talk initially of developing Silicon Valley roundabout in London, which is subsequently now thankfully called Tech City rather than Silicon Valley, because it's like never going to be that, because it's a different proposition culturally. You know, that's a big problem for startups in London as well. What I think London is very good at is that organic networking, because I don't agree that you can actually create networks necessarily in that way. I think successful networks are one which emerge organically from a need. So you really want to be in a network, you're going to make one, right? You're going to find others like you, and you're going to do that. So I think, you know, even state initiatives to make networks usually fail, you know, because when the state builds it, people generally don't visit.